an astonishing exposure of lies, submissions and contradictions from the highest level of government, such as Mr. Bin Laden's mates with standing eyes, steel frame buildings apparently fragile, frantic options trading price of the event, and Building 7 dropping to the floor after the penthouse fell over and some desk caught fire. Sorry. The Patriots Act basically waiting in an out tray for its signal, and Larry Silverstein's no claims bonds, and no doubt everybody else can add some to that. The determined, persistent and highly qualified Dr Judy Wood has brought forth evidence that the towers returned to dust in mid-air, and then leaving a relatively small debris pile. She also examines the strange Hutchison effect and its ability to alter and distort metals. Essential similarities in the debris have been observed. Have her findings in pursuit of justice and truth been welcomed officially? It's strange that some truth groups are skirting around the phenomenon, preferring the thermite theory. One actually had the power to turn massive structures to dust. The debunkers are out in force, and some are quite convincing. The actual truth now obscured by mis and disinformation. The wars with civilian deaths in other countries continue, as the suppressive legislation on home soil. Dare we ask who might benefit? So just before I turn it over to the lady herself, I would like to say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rob, for that excellent introduction. I'm really glad to see the hall so full. It's a wonderful sort of accolade, really. So thank you very much, and thanks to everyone who's come such a long way. Another book you might be interested in, which I haven't really spoken enough about, is Professor Eric Larson's The Skull of Yorick, the emptiness of American thinking at a time of great peril. He writes about Dr. Judy Wood in his book from his perspective as well, and that's available on the internet. It's not available in this country, but I think it's not too expensive to get hold of, so you might want to have a look at that. So without further ado, I'd now like to pass over to Dr. Wood, and she will carry on. And we prepared some of this at short notice, so I hope you appreciate that. And here we go. Thanks very much, everyone.
Well, I'm a bit overwhelmed to find so many people here wanting to hear what I have to say. It's wonderful. It's truly wonderful. Thank you. So, the subject of the day, where did the towers go? Let's see. Well, once upon a time, there were two towers. Then they went away. That material there is all that was left of that building. That's building 3. A lot of people overlook that building. And this is the remains of Tower 2, about the lobby size down there. To remind you of how big of a mass was there. And then it is gone. This picture was taken on 9/11. Where is all the debris? Everybody wants to know who did it. They just have to know who did it. And so they jump to conclusions. But the planes did it. No, it was bombs in the building. No, it was thermite. And pretty soon there's just answers all over the place of what they think it could be. Spray-on thermite, 4th generation, mini nukes. Just throwing out answers. You can't really find the answer that way. Because if you had a dead body you came upon, how did it die? Well, we found a smoking gun. So now we know it had to be the gun that did it. But then it turns out you found the dead body underneath the garage door. The garage door must have done it. Wait a minute, maybe he was poisoned. So guessing the answer with just a few details is not a good way to go. I don't know if many of you heard about this case that really was just oversaturated in our media. This case of Casey Anthony. a mother accused of killing her child, and then was found not guilty because, and everyone was shocked, not everyone, but the people who were following the story were shocked. But the next day, Jennifer Ford, one of the jurors, getting feedback here, spoke to the media saying they did not know how the child died. How can you convict somebody of a crime if you don't know what crime they even committed? The jury did not know what happened. So finding out what happened is the most important thing. Then you can determine how it happened, who was involved, why they did it. But what we're going to concentrate on, because it's the most important thing, is what happened. The main thing of what happened, the towers didn't burn up, nor did they slam to the ground. They turned into dust in midair. How do we know that? Wait, does that look like a collapse to you? We were told it was a collapse. We were basically brainwashed into reacting to this picture, like flashcards. Memorize the word collapse when you see this. But that's not a collapse. If they had hit the ground, if they had slammed into the ground, there would be over 1 million tons of debris piled up on the ground. But that didn't happen. If they had slammed to the ground, Manhattan would have been flooded, because the bathtub, which holds out the Hudson River, would have been ruptured. We'll talk about the bathtub a little bit more. And that didn't happen. And if they'd slammed to the ground, the seismic readings would have recorded 2 500,000-ton buildings slamming to the ground, plus a 230,000-ton building slamming to the ground. And that didn't happen. So we first are going to determine what happened by looking at these 3 main areas, and then there's a whole host of other areas we'll look at as well. So here we have what was left after the towers went away. Only buildings with a WTC prefix were destroyed that day. Really, hardly anything else was even scratched. A few damaging things here and there, but nothing catastrophic that couldn't be repaired. That's all that was left of the North Tower. North wall, the south wall, and a little bit of stairwell B. Now the towers were steel structures with aluminum cladding on the outside. Well, you see a few pieces of aluminum cladding laying around, and you get a steel piece there. But right in front of the front door, why don't you have piles of steel structure? And there's this ambulance in pretty much pristine condition. Maybe the door got done a little bit, but I don't see any big piece of steel clobbering the top of it. And we know the park ambulance is at ground level, not up in space. So that's ground level. Here's a newscast from the 24 hours later.
Down in Lower Manhattan today, George. I don't know if you heard a little earlier me raise this question, which was actually raised by ABC's Jackie Judd, as we look at these areas down below and the video of where the towers used to stand and where is all the rubble gone. And have you been able to, is there any way you can answer that question?
I'm sorry, Peter, I didn't get the question.
Okay, I apologize. Jackie Judd and several other people keep asking us, when you look at where the towers used to stand, there is surprisingly so little rubble. Where did all the rubble go?
It's a very good question, Peter, and I have asked some people who've been doing some of the rescue and recovery work this morning. If you look behind me, you can see the very remains, the skeletal remains of the World Trade Center. And one volunteer, Robert Gerlinski, explained to me the reason there's so little rubble is that all of it simply fell down. into the ground and was pulverized, evaporated.
What was that he said? Fell down to the ground, was pulverized, and evaporated. I don't mean to be making fun of these people at all. They're trying to explain what they see. They don't see enough debris. And they're trying to come up with some explanation as to where the building went. Actually, that video clip I saw that day, and that partially inspired the title of the book. Because why did people quit asking that question? Here's another short clip the following day.
I was astonished at the degree to which solid materials were turned into pulverized dust as a consequence of that building collapse. I think it was striking.
People were shocked. It did not make sense how much it was turned to dust. The top view of what was left, we have Building 3 here, Tower 1, Tower 2, Building 6, it had all these cylindrical cutouts in it. Approximately in the middle, 50% of that building's missing. Building 5 had cylindrical cutouts in it. Some circular cutouts there. Building 7 went missing. The buildings on either side weren't really destroyed much. There were some stab wounds, I call it, some pieces of steel beam that went into this building, but essentially nothing happened to this building. The sidewalk in front of it didn't even get covered. And Building 4, that's when it often gets forgotten. The north wing of it seemed to be sliced off like with an X-Acto knife, and the main body of the building just went missing. Just the north wing stayed, or that part of the north wing. Here's that remaining stub of the north wing of Building 4, and looking at it directly on, here's what you would see. If you looked out of through the building across the street with binoculars, looked in, you could probably see what was left on someone's desk in there. Come to think of it, it reminded me of an image I saw as a child when my family drove through Topeka, Kansas the morning after that horrendous tornado that tore up a large part of Topeka, Kansas. I remember seeing this apartment building, it was probably a dorm, but to a child it was an apartment building, sliced in two. Half of it was just gone, and the other half, like nothing happened. The bed was still made, magazines on the bedspread, some books on the dresser, and clothes hanging in the closet that did not look disturbed. No support under that floor, so I really don't think somebody walked in there and made the bed. It was just unsupported hanging there. And it also might remind you of the Pentagon. It's a clean slice. From ground level, here's what it looked like that day. There's just this little corner left. And after they cleaned up the corner, there's that sliced off part of the north wing. So here's what was left, this elevation map, but there's what should have been there, that ghost pattern. And if you notice, there's a little pimple down there at the bottom of Building 3. 14 folks survived down there. The rest of the building went away, and who was left in that little corner there survived. Also, the bottom of Tower 1, that little hump there, that was stairwell B. 14 people survived there as well. And one of them, when they came out, said this. I looked and said, guys, there used to be 106 floors above us, and now I'm seeing sunshine. There's nothing above us. That big building doesn't exist. These are the biggest office buildings in the world, and I didn't see one desk or one chair or one phone, nothing. Another one talked about walking out onto an empty football field. Something I've often talked about is toilets. There should be at least 3,000 toilets in those buildings. Busted up toilets are easy to recognize. Recognizable parts. So you have all this gray dust, you should have some nice shiny sections of porcelain, assuming that is what they used. But you didn't see any. Not one bit. Again, here's the cutout part of Building 6 and those other cylindrical holes. We're going to concentrate on the main body of Building 4 for a minute, because it's fascinating the way it just went missing. Here's an actual photograph of that area. Here's that tiny little corner, but the rest of it just went missing. There's a Burger King across the street. They were still flipping burgers over there, feeding the firefighters. The irony is just amazing. And right across the street from there, there's round holes in those windows. We'll see the pictures later. A rock goes through a window, it breaks the window, or a baseball goes through the window, it shatters the window. Doesn't make a perfectly round hole. Again, this is the elevation map. And right there, I found a picture just below ground, from the mall. There was a mall, the first level below ground. And then 2 more stories below that was the loading docks. And we'll also look at that. It was this shape, the drive-in here, and it was color-coded. This area is purple to let the driver know he's under Building 5, and it was green under Building 4, so they would know where to park. And we're going to look down this way and see this intact end of that parking garage. Here they are walking 1 story below ground. This is Innovation luggage, and this is Hallmark cards. We a little bit punched through over here, but it didn't go much below this level. This is down in the parking garage.
Going down to the parking garage. We're in quite deep.
These are the first pictures of search crews underneath the World Trade Center, desperately looking for survivors.
Somebody down here?
That wasn't necessarily this area, but you hear that echo? Someone down there? You know, the echoes. That wasn't even a full parking garage. That echo was tremendous. So again, the purple is under Building 5, green is under Building 4. Right above the end of that hallway is where that building went missing. Where'd it go? Mind you, that was also the location where the top of Tower 2 was tipping over and then it turned to dust. That's where it would have fallen. If the top 35 floors of Tower 2 had fallen to the ground, landed on Building 4, would it have looked like that? Now we're looking back from between Building 4 and 5 through the complex. There's Stairwell B where those folks survived, those 14 people who thought that when the building came apart, they thought they were so buried it would be forever till they could get to them and they'd be dead before workers could pull the rubble off of them. But then the dust cleared and they looked up at blue sky. There would be over 1 million tons of debris piled on the ground if those towers had slammed to the ground. Didn't happen. Looking from 180 degrees on the other side, again, here's Stairwell B, the north and south facade. Where's the debris? There is some, okay, you got a few pieces of stuff here and there, but it's not anywhere near the amount to explain 2 110-story buildings.